One thing I want to just review with you is systems theory. And one of the statements I want to make here is by Olson, who said, rooted in systems theory, family systems theory insists that the counselor needs to view each person from the context of the whole unit or system, the family. Family systems therapy has developed disparate approaches that one needs to sort out and relate to one another in order to understand and apply the therapy effectively. But we want to look at each person in the context of the family or the context of the system itself. We are not disregarding the intrapsychic dynamics, no, but we are looking more at interrelationships, how that persons fit in that family unit per se. And so that's what we really want to look at. And some of the things that I want to look at are some of the central concepts in terms of systems theory. And I might have gone over these, but I want to review these again and again and again so that when we get into the assessment part of utilizing integrated family therapy model by Olson, we're going to have at least a good sense of the basic concepts. One of the concepts is the first central concept is the focus on the interpersonal origin of psychopathology. Now, early psychoanalytic theory had focused on the need for a detailed study of the individual's past, emphasizing insight into the person's intrapsychic internal conflicts and their genetic origins. The assumption was that when the individual achieves insight, he or she could function with much less conflict. You want to keep that in mind. The assumption was that when the individual achieves insight, he or she could function with much less conflict. But think about that for a little bit. Think about whether how this impacts applied when it comes down to persons who have diverse educational backgrounds or from different socioeconomic statuses as such. At the time that the psychoanalytic Sigmund Freud theory was going at full force, there was a certain population of persons that he counseled at that time. And they were basically more of the upper class per se. But just think about that in terms of the insight. Of little concern was the family's role in developing such conflict. So the family wasn't considered, or how current family relationships maintain the conflict from the interpersonal origin of psychopathology. The family role in terms of psychopathology or what it might be was not considered at one while in terms of contributing to conflicts that one might be having in the current family or family relationship. In contrast, family therapy focuses on the interaction between people as a principal area for insight and change. And here, the family therapist or the systems focus is that we're looking at interactions between people where conflicts come about more so than from intrapsychic dynamics. And it's kind of like interesting in terms of how I really think as to how God came and tabernacled among us in the form of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and was bringing us back into a right relationship with the Lord God Almighty, a reconciliation, bring us back into a right relationship with the Father, God the Father. And that's interesting there. It's many times when we're looking in terms of persons who are having conflicts from a family therapy perspective or systemic perspective, we're looking in terms of hopefully healing relationships, the reconciliation of persons in terms of relationships, more so than just that individual's insight into what's going on with them in terms of the relationships as such. But it said here, by changes in both structure and the communication of the family, one can frequently resolve problems and achieve a more appropriate sense of equilibrium. Family therapists differ, however, in how they think these changes ought to occur. And with that sort of statement, family therapists differ in terms of how they think that changes can occur in terms of resolving problems in families as such. That is telling you that there's a certain group of family therapists that we have. We have the J. Haley's, who is a purist, and he is a family therapist that really feels that problem-solving therapy is the only way to go. There is no other way. He's a purist. We have the Monica McGoldrick, who is a family of origin family therapist, and who focuses on looking at, as well as Gregory Bateson, in terms of how your families, how your family of origin has impacted you in such a way that it has a lot of influence upon how you relate in your present family or your different relationships as such. So they are more family of origin sort of persons. We have a Mnuchin, who is a structural family therapist, in terms of saying we need to look in terms of these boundaries and hierarchies in families and how to rearrange these sort of things in order to resolve problems as such. And I can just go down the line in terms of different schools of family therapists who feel that this is the way you can bring about changes, impact changes as far as persons are concerned. So they have their different ways, but they're still looking from a systemic perspective, the person within the context of the family unit, not just the person as out there dealing with interpsychic dynamic. Now, the second concept is that of the identified patient. You can't get enough of the IP here talking about that. Families often focus on or present one member as needing treatment. And you'll find that on page 18 in your book. You can see some of this is just coming from your book. I'll elaborate a little bit more on it. Ms. Garcia, a sixth grade teacher, phones the Jeffersons because their son Justin has frequent angry outbursts that disrupts his class in school. Mrs. Garcia has referred Justin to the school counselor, who has now recommended that Jamal and Paul Jefferson, Justin's parents, seek counseling. In the initial visit to Cynthia, a pastoral counselor, Jamal and Paula present Justin as a problem in school and want to know how Justin can be helped. Shouldn't he receive individual counseling? They asked Cynthia. They add that Justin had been this way since he was a toddler. Thus, they labeled Justin as the person needing help, the identified patient. Now, it's interesting as to how the parents have said that this young man has been having problems since he was a toddler. He's been having problems since he was a toddler. And so, therefore, he basically has been labeled by the parents as the identified patient, the IP. Now, we who are the systemic school family therapists utilize this word IP, identified patient, as a way of saying that this is what the family is presenting to us. However, we as family therapists know that what the family is bringing to us might not be the problem. And so, therefore, we're just going to call this as the identified patient as such. But in further counseling and further work with the families as such, hopefully being guided and led by the Holy Spirit of God as such, you can get to what might be the real issue or the real problem or problems that the family needs to focus on. One of the unfortunate parts here is that when you have someone coming in and being brought in by the family or by parents and saying, that is the person who is creating the problem, many times it really makes that person feel pretty badly inside. The self-esteem might not be all that great in the beginning, and now they're bringing me in as saying that I'm the one who might be the crazy one in the family. I'm the one that they're saying that is creating all the problems for the family. And so therefore, you as that therapist, you as that counselor, must have heads up on that and saying, okay, in what way can I, as the counselor, as the therapist, as the one who's the facilitator, as the one who's the coach, in what way can I really get this young person or this person off the hot seat in terms of being the one that is identified as the cause of problems, or the IP person, or the crazy person? And we're going to take a look at that as we further go into the course here. So the IP is another concept. Now, a third concept is that a family maintains homeostasis by feedback loops that at times involves the child acting out. Now, the acting out behavior can serve as a part of a feedback loop that returns some stability to the family. Now, that's interesting. The acting out behavior can serve as a part of the feedback loop that returns some stability to the family. Thus, in the Jefferson family, Justin's acting out brings his parents a renewed sense of togetherness as they try to get help for Justin and talk with school officials about his problems. As a result, conflict between them, the parents, recedes. Here the symptom, Justin's acting out, serve the system by allowing homeostasis to return to the family. And keep that in mind, the homeostasis to return to the family, or the acting out behavior, has a way of stabilizing, bringing some stability to the family. Let's really keep our eyes and ears open on this one here, because we're going to be talking about this later on. A fourth major concept is circular causality. Circular causality. This notion means that because everyone in a family system is interconnected, a change in one member of the subsystem affects other members and the system as a whole. Now, we have been talking about, we had mentioned the subsystem in terms of an intact family, where there's a parent, there's a father, mother, sibling, a sibling, this intact family. Now, in this intact family, we're looking at this intact family in terms of there being the subsystems. The subsystem, when we talk about subsystems, we're talking about the marital subsystem. We're talking about the parental subsystem, and we're talking about the sibling subsystem. And we're going to be visiting these subsystems again. So here we said a change in one member of a subsystem affects other members and the system as a whole. Older psychoanalytic model conceived of etiology, the cause of things, in terms of prior events that cause the symptoms, and the present, which is linear causality. So psychoanalysis, they focus on saying that, well, something happened in that person past many years ago, the ones that are now creating the symptoms that they're having in the present. Past interpsychic stuff going on unresolved is now creating a lot of things that are going on now, and this person's having conflict in the present, linear causality. Family system therapy help facilitate a profound paradigm shift and moving from a linear causality to circular causality. Thus, in the Jefferson family, a marital problem affects Justin. Okay, a marital problem affects Justin. When Justin acts out, the marital subsystem changes for the better. Conversely, if Justin were to stop acting out, the marital system might lose its focus and change for the worse. The goal of family system therapy is not to attempt to move back in time and understand the origin of the problem, as in the linear model, but rather to shift relationship, subsystems, and communication patterns in the present. And there are some interesting situation dynamics that I've noticed happening or going on in the process of counseling young persons who've been brought in to me as being the IP, identified patient, by the parents. And the parents are bringing them in terms of my fixing that young person as such. And it's in the process of really taking a look at the family dynamics and how that young person functions in that unit. Many times it never fails that there are situations where the young person is at a subconscious level, is not at a conscious level. The acting out is for the purpose of mom and dad not divorcing. They've heard all the arguments, they've heard all the threats, and so forth and so on. That a lot of people don't even know what's going on. In the church, what it might be, everything seems to be fine. You know. To the community, everything seems to be fine. You know, but this young person has heard all these arguments and the threats and this what it might be, and so therefore all of a sudden they start to acting out. And the acting out takes it away from the conflict that the mom and dad are having between one another, and they start to focusing on the young person. And so, with the hope, with the young person, hopefully, that by focusing on him, not knowing it, focus on the young person, they would not divorce as such. And that has happened. But you have to be really aware, heads up, what it might be, to really pick this up as such. And that's one situation I've had, well, many situations. One situation where I have basically said, okay, I will let you know where the mother brought the young man in at that time. He was about 12, and said that he is having problems in school. He's really started acting out in school. He's not doing well in school. He's not getting along too well with his peers, and we can't hardly do anything with him now. And so therefore we need you to really counsel him and to really help us to find out what's going on here. And the process of dealing with this family and talking with this young man on a one-on-one basis, I needed to see the family unit. I really needed to be able to visit with the family. And I preferred at that time, if the family would allow it, to go into the home. And so the family did allow me to come into the home, where I was able to see the father. The fathers had some adult children, so one of his adult sons was there. Also, of course, the mother, of course, was there. The young man, his sister, younger sister, not too much younger than he, was at a basketball game at that time, but I was able at least to have the father's older son, one of the father's son, the young man, and the mother. And now, as I always show due respect for all persons in their homes, so therefore I don't go in and with certain kinds of agendas or what it might be. You have to show due respect for persons of family, because family has rules, boundaries as such. So therefore I was looking to the family in terms of where they want me to sit, or what it might be, and so forth and so on. Being a male, dealing with another male, mature male, who's head of the house, I definitely did not want to behave in any manner that would be disrespectful toward him or make him seem less than in front of his family. That was not a good thing to do as such. But the thing that happened here is that the mother wanted us to go into a room, just her husband, the young man, and myself. And the older brother, she wasn't too particular about the older brother coming in, so we went into the room. So the mother and the young man and myself were in the room, and but the father didn't show. So the mother was asking him to come in, and he just refused. He flatly refused to come in. He said, "No way." I said, "Okay." I said, I asked the mother, "Well, how would you want, us to go with this? I could basically, we can not go with this, and do all respect to your husband. If this is not comfortable for him, we can just not." But she wanted to continue, and so I also kind of touched base with the dad and talked with him. Would you mind? Would you mind in terms of our since your wife said you wanted to talk with him? He said, "Yeah, he's the one, the boy, the one that's got the problem as such. So therefore, go ahead." Okay. I felt a little bit more comfortable, and but in the process of really talking with the mother and the young man, and who was pretty verbal, very artistic. That young man was he could draw you. Such a great portrait drawer. Of course, he beat me half to death when it came down to chess. I thought I knew how to play chess, but he taught me a lesson or a few in the process of our conversation as such. But in the process of allowing persons to talk to the young man, I really left the situation knowing within my heart that the young man was the IP, but the problem that was existing was that of husband-wife. There was a marital problem. I continued to work with the young man, and in all honesty, only in prayer, I really asked God to help me to get an opportunity and to at least find out what is happening in terms of the marital sort of situation. So it's just, and it's interesting as to how God works things. That's why I really feel, from my perspective, I don't know about other persons, but when I do my counseling, I always have to have a prayer, my scripture, and I always have to know that God is walking with me. The Holy Spirit is guiding. I have to do that's my security, okay? Because I know I cannot do it on my own. I don't care how much education or how many techniques, what it might be. And it just so happened that when I left the place that I was at as a therapist and went into my own private practice, the mother called me and said that, "Hey, I was looking for you. I heard that you had left, but I still need you to see my son." And I said, "Well, that'll be fine." And matter of fact, that was about a year or so later. He was older and taller. Had grown pretty tall there, and she was afraid that he was going to get involved with gangs, and he was still creating a lot of problems in school and acting out and so forth and so on. And I talked with that young man for a little bit, and I really made it in a way very clear to him, at this period in time, would you like to really tell me what's really going on, what's really happening, what you're really seeing in terms of your family? Help me to understand your family. And he really started to talking to me about some of the things that were going on. Mom, as it might be, it came to my understanding that this was not his biological mother, This was not his biological father. This was his mother's. His mother was, the lady I thought was his mother's sister that was taking care of him as well as his sister. And at least he clarified that for me a little bit there. And then he talked, and I was just praying to the Lord to create opportunities for me to really be able to really get into what I felt that was going on with the marital sort of deal. And I really talked to him in a way that I really sent a message to him that I really feel that you're okay. But the way you're going about dealing with the stress or the strain, what it might be, is creating more problems for you. There are other ways of dealing with it. But I said, I think that you are triangulated between I call your mom and dad, and I need to pull you out of there. I want you to allow your mom and dad to be able to deal with their own issues. Okay? Would you do that for me? Would you do that for me? Let them deal with their own issues. And sure enough, evidently he did something, because the mother came and with her husband and said that we need to talk to you. And I said that what is the situation? She said that we've been having marital conflicts for a long time. For a long time. This marriage has been, and I'm just if my husband does not participate in counsel with me, I am going to divorce him. And he said, well, yeah, that's why I'm coming, because she said that she's going to divorce me. And I said, well, I appreciate your coming. I made it very clear to the mom, I don't really counsel for divorce. I counsel for reconciliation. But it just so happened that in the process of really doing the counseling, and the husband, the best he could, he did the best he could do, really. But he really, I was able to really, God finally gave me an opportunity to detriangulate that young man, where he was able to not try to keep this from happening here. I was able to, in the process of the husband, to make his position very clear to me as well as his wife, that I'm not going to change. I'm going to do the same thing I've always been doing, and that is just it. The wife has come to the conclusion, since I did not believe in divorce as such, she said she's come to the conclusion that, well, there are certain things I'm going to do. I'm a Christian, and he's always cutting off my stations that I have. I'm going to really, I'm not going to leave him, but I am going to do a few things. I said, would you like to let me know now what you're going to do? She wouldn't do that. But it just so happened that she ended up moving everything that she had out of the bedroom, with him and moving downstairs. And she said that I've decided I'm not going to divorce him. I'm going to stay with him. I said, that's fine. That's your decision. The husband mentioned that, as far as I'm concerned, counseling is not the thing that I'm going to participate in. As I've told you before, I'm going to stay as I am. I asked the mother, I said, that do you wish to remain in counseling with me while he was there? She said, yes. And so the thing that she did is work with me in a process of getting a better sense of her family, that unit there, better sense of self and that unit what might be. And she really worked in such a way that she was able to individuate, come into her own, and to really say, hey, I am in my church. As a matter of fact, I have a job now. I said, really? She was driving a shuttle bus in Seattle, of all the places. First time she worked. and she just really pulled it together. The boy, everything cleared up with him, such. The husband, he was still doing his booze, still doing his drinking, what it might be, but at least we have two persons who at least made some type of movement as such. But this young man was trying a lady, he was acting out, he was really heading for trouble until I was able to pull him out of there, and we're able to look at the real issue here. And that couple got a clarification in terms of what they needed to do. And many years later, I saw her, and she said, "I'm doing fine." She was looking very lovely, and the family's okay. Young man is doing fine. And I just said, "Well, all glory and honor goes to the Lord. Good to see you." And so, therefore, there are some acting out behaviors that you might see where the young person is trying to really maintain the homeostasis. But many times it's to the detriment of that young person. But many times you have to be able to identify that as such also. Now, another concept is family rules help organize family interactions. Family rules help organize family interaction. The family rarely verbalizes these rules, but they nonetheless provide expectation about family roles and action, hence guiding family life. These rules are sometimes handed down generationally. Healthy families can adopt new structures and new rules as responses to developmental crises. And you live long enough, all of us are going to go through some type of developmental crises as such. And that's just the way it is. It will happen if you live long enough. Whereas unhealthy family holds tenaciously to old rules and structures, thereby making the problem of the family worse. Okay, there are some families will not change per se, and so therefore things get worse. These rigid and unhealthy rules often hinder families' work in handling normal developmental crises. For example, adolescents frequently challenge family rules to incorporate adolescent issues. Second-order change, a shift in rules or ways of organizing families necessary to move from one developmental stage to another. Now, I've had a lot of my young persons tell me that my parents don't respect, the things that I tell them or what I discuss with them. Here they are 15, 16, what it might be, and they're saying, my parents do not respect or give me credit for being able to think. And so therefore, they find themselves reacting to the families not accommodating their developmental movement. They find themselves reacting, which create more conflict in the family, more so than being able to be proactive in terms of saying, hey, I'm 15, I'm 16, I'm 17, in spite of the fact that my family is not going to do any changing to accommodate my getting older here and wanting to go to the prom or this or that and so forth and so on, then maybe I need to look at the way I deal with this. And I've had a young lady, she got the concept. She got the concept where she really, as she grew, I saw her developing from age 9 all the way up to age 18. That's how long she was in counsel with me. I've had other young persons who were in counseling for long periods of time with me, from pre-adolescence through adolescence to 18 or what it might be. And this young lady got the concept. But the thing that was happening is that as we were dialoguing, as I was dealing with the family, her family consisted of 3 sisters and a brother, 2 older sisters, the brother, then she was next to the brother, and a younger sister, really, and her grandmother. She got the concept. She listened very attentively to many things that we talked about. My therapy was different in terms of some of the young persons. We went and we related. We did things together. We actively did things. It was not a sitting in the office trying to get into their heads. With adolescents that I've dealt with, that's one of the things that they hated. You trying to get into their heads, or you trying to be what it might be. The ones I've dealt with didn't like it, okay? And so I had sense enough to know that. They were definitely brought up in the church. The church was a very strong influence in this young lady's and the family's life, really. The grandmother was a very prominent person in the church. So therefore, the rest of the siblings had a hard time really getting the concept. But I had her and her brother in individual counseling, and I counseled the family as a whole. In the family therapist sessions, you know, I saw how that there were certain rules that you have to abide by. That was just it. So I was able to really recognize those rules in terms of a grandmother, but the co-therapist who counseled the three other siblings did not get that concept and began to step over certain boundaries, to intrude into certain areas that should not have been intruded into. And so therefore, during some of the family therapy sessions, I've had to really, that other therapists became a client themselves because the grandmother was so angry with this other therapist, so what it might be, and they find, here we go at one another. You know, it was actually going at, I mean, really, you know, and so therefore I was trying to, and the therapist was not what you call one who had committed her life to Christ. She had not. And so therefore many times the young, my kids, what might be and so forth and so on, we were, had to disengage those two, you know, from a personal combat here. I was trying to tell the other therapist that there are certain things that we need to respect in terms of this grandmother. And this grandmother said that she's not respecting my authority. She's not respecting what I tell my grandkids that they should not do or not, should do it or not what it might be. And she's just coming in, and we don't see her as a therapist. We're seeing her as just another member that could be a member of the family that's creating conflicts. And so I talked with the therapist about it a lot, but that didn't work too well. But the thing that happened is that this young lady, in the process of her having individual work with me plus family therapy, she got the concept. First of all, she knew that the important thing for her to do is not only start to get the sense of herself, who she is, but also to get a sense of each member of her family and how they functioned and how she fit in the family system. And she would just, when she got about 15 in that area, she would just really just surprise me with so much insight in terms of her grandmother, in terms of grandmother's behaviors, because, you know, maybe as she was coming up, she didn't have this, she didn't have that. It might be my sisters. And she started to really see how each would fit, you know, how she fit in that unit as such, you know, and a sense of self. So therefore, in many conflicts she would start to have with grandmother, I told her, now you think about it. Since you have an understanding of your grandmother, so you have an understanding of your siblings, what it might be, now why are you now engaging in conflicts with them when you know that this is the way they are? So the reasonable thing for you to do now is to say, well, that's the way they are. And so therefore you have no reason to engage and argue with them. And so she got it. And so therefore she put a lot of her energies, and of course she's a great basketball player. She played varsity for Foss. That was one of her strengths. As a matter of fact, we would go out on the court and she would beat me all the time, you know. Here I am going up there and, you know, making, but she started growing. But she was a great basketball player. She focused on that. That was her sanity, she said, you know. And but one of the things that she really started doing is saying, hey, in spite of the fact Grandma is not allowing me to accommodating my developing. I'm no longer 9. I'm now 15. Of course, moves to 16. It's not accommodating that. She's still rigid and still what it might be. I don't have to be reactive to it, And so she found ways to be proactive, and that where the conflicts with Grandma started to such. Where she was able to go on and finish. She recently finished FOS, and now she's attending St. Martin's on a Gates Scholarship and as such. But she was the only one that came out of the family system that went on to be accepted at a legitimate college and fellowship, what it might be, because she got the concept in terms of, in spite of the fact the family was rigid, I did not violate grandmother's rules. I did not. The other therapists did. But I taught this young lady, she learned how to come into her own and understand her family, how she fit in the family unit, and learn how to be proactive more so than reactive, and was able to therefore be creative. And of course, she knew her commitment was to Christ. But her commitment to Christ was not so much because of the grandmother, no. Not because grandmother, no. Because brother, no. It was because something that she chose. She chose to commit her life to Christ and to do that which she felt that was pleasing in the sight of the Lord. She chose that. Now that's very unique. That was a very unique and different situation, because a lot of my kids did not turn out that way. Okay, but it's good if you can impact one. Then that one person can impact many others as such. But again, when you find a family system that's pretty rigid, then you look in that system and just see who you can work with that can find some ways of even dealing with that rigid family system that's not able to be flexible enough to accommodate that person who's no longer pre-adolescent, who's now an adolescent going into young adulthood, how you can really work that person to make everything okay in the family. It's a lot of work, but it's something that's really very gratifying and very helpful to a young person. Now, finally, boundaries and triangles form a seventh central idea of family systems theory. Boundaries and triangles, you're going to hear about these over and over again. Boundaries are a necessary way of establishing hierarchies and organization within a family. They operate in three ways. First, each generation establishes boundaries to clarify who is in charge within the family. Have you ever thought about that in your own family? Have you ever thought about that in your own family? Who is in charge within the family? This process involves issues like making sure that grandparents do not undercut parents' disciplinary efforts, and that parents do parent their children, rather than children feeling responsible for their parents. I'm certain that many people who have been in the counseling area have found that there are some young persons who've been what we call parentified, where they have had to take over the role of caring for themselves as well as their siblings, because their parents were not able to, due to many sort of situations, many of the ones I work with, due to the parents being involved in a lot of drug, alcohol use or abuse. And I've had kids as young as 5 trying to take care of 2- and 3-year-old siblings as such. And of course, it's an interesting dynamic when you have to actually work with young persons who have been parentified. It's a dynamic that's quite interesting but very challenging in terms of that. That young person, this young person, many of them I work with, but this young man, he had to take care of his young siblings because his mother was out there on drugs, his father was an alcoholic, that he would always point out to me that there he is, that's my dad, out there on the corner, and he was unhappy because CPS came in and took his brother, himself and his brother, sister, split him up and put them in different foster homes. And he was very, very angry about that because he saw himself as being the one to care for his siblings. And so therefore he blew out. By the time he got to me, he had blown out at least 9 foster homes because they could not do anything with him. They could not do a thing with him. And one lady who thought that she was such a great psychologist and psychiatrist, she made that very clear. And she got really upset in an attitude because I was trying to work with this young man in terms of he needs to learn how to be, at that time he was he was 10. He needs to learn how to be a child, a 10-year-old. And she got very angry just because of the mere fact that I took him out, in the process of talking with him and got him a little bit of ice cream. She was very upset about that, and so therefore I said, well, I don't mean to disrespect what you have established in your home. So therefore, knowing that this is something that you do not want me to do with him while he's in your home, I will not do that. But I knew within my own heart, this was a Christian lady also, but I knew within my own heart that the way she was I knew this young man being parentified, that it was going to be a blowout. And sure enough, about a week or so later on, there was a big conflict that he had with her. She was trying to tell him to do something, and he cursed her out. Cursed her out, left, and went to a bar. And so therefore, that was the end of that placement as such for him. So therefore, definitely want to make certain that parents do parent their children and not the children trying to be responsible for the parents, as frequently happens in alcoholic and other types of dysfunctional families. Second, boundaries separate subsystem, and as I mentioned before, each intact family has at least 3 subsystems. A marital subsystem that needs time apart from parenting activities, a parenting subsystem that involves parents working cooperatively as parents, and a sibling subsystem that allows for the sibling relationships and protect those relationships from unhealthy triangles that result when one sibling gains favored status. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that there are many families over a period of 26 years I've been working with families and young persons, as well as 7 of those 26 years in private practice. There are situations where persons have really found themselves in a certain kind of certain status within a family system. There are some persons who have found themselves as being the scapegoat. With the family, one of the families I worked with, this young lady was the scapegoat. She was the one that was bearing all the sins of the family that they put on her. She was bad news, and they could, they would probably send her into the wilderness as such with all the sins. And I asked, what is it? I asked the grandmother at this time. I said, I'm confused. I said, what is it about this young lady? She was second to the oldest. That makes you so angry that you really, and that when we say we should love one another, love our what it might be, that means our own family folks too. We need to start in the home. Charity to start in the home. And she said she looks so much like her mother. Yeah, she looks so much like her mother. That's her daughter. And of course, unfortunately, her daughter was murdered from a domestic violence situation. And she evidently did not ever forgive her daughter she considered her daughter responsible for being killed. But the girl, she said, looked so much like her mother. And so therefore, it just kind of got on her nerves. Behaviors like her mother got on her nerves. So we had to really work with that a little bit as such. Of course, there are some persons who have been the standard bearer of the family. That is, they're the one that the family expect to do great things. And they suffer just as much pressure. Many of them I've talked with several persons, and they mentioned that they expect me to be perfect. They expect me not to make any kind of mistakes, what it might be, you know. And it was a lot of pressure that they were experiencing because they were the ones that were the standard bearers. They're the ones who were going to break ground for the family and move forward for the family. And that was quite a bit. So therefore, there are persons who do gain unfavored or favored position in certain kind of family units as such. Reflect on the families that you run in contact with. Reflect on your own family. One lady was having problems in her marriage because in her family system, in all honesty, she was considered she was the scapegoat in a way. There's another word that she used, but I don't want to use the word, but she was considered the ne'er-do-good person by her mother as well as her dad, you know. And so therefore that's something that she had not really resolved or really worked with her mother and father about. And so therefore it spilled over into her marriage that she had and was creating a lot of conflict. All of the conflict really subsided only when she went back home herself and had a conversation with her dad, had a conversation with her mother about how she felt and how she felt what was going on with her and her family as opposed to her sister, who was a favorite one because her sister had the body shape, the looks, and everything else that the family appreciated, where she was not. She was a chubby, what it might be, not the one who was attractive one as such, you know. And so she did that, and when she did that, then she started working a lot with her husband, and already had an adolescent son, in order to really get things okay. But she did that on her own as such. Now, third, boundaries define the way the family interact with the outside world. The boundaries among these subsystems must be firm enough to make clear who is in charge within the family. I said that, but of course, it dictates how you might interact with the outside world. I always had situations where certain parents would say, "You are not going to make us look bad. How you behave is going to be a reflection on us." And so therefore, there was a lot of pressure put on that person in terms of how you carry yourself, you know, in terms of dealing with people, be it in the school system, in your community, what it might be. There's a lot of pressure that was put on some persons in terms of you're not making me look bad. And I know that in terms of the persons within the church setting, I know that there were some of the persons were saying that you're definitely not going to be acting up in the church and make me look bad in terms of pastor and my fellow parishioners as such. And I knew better myself, because when my grandmother would just look at me, a certain look, and I would be very quiet because I knew that I was going to be in for a beating. And so therefore I didn't get it, because I had sense enough when she would give me that look in church to settle down, you know, and which I did. So therefore some families are definitely dictated in terms of how you interact with the outside world, you know, and there are certain boundaries that families do need to set in terms of how you interact with the outside world as such, you know. There are some persons who did not have families who set certain kind of boundaries, and so therefore there were some kids, in all honesty, that they would go up to strangers or what it might be and embrace strangers and become attached to strangers and so forth and so on, and don't even know, they just, here we go, you know. And I had one kid come in my office And for goodness sakes, you know, when about time for him to go, he was in a foster home, it's time for him to go, he just started screaming and hollering. He had become instantly attached to me. He didn't want to leave. And so therefore, I had to really, in a way of saying, okay, well, the one thing I'll do is I'll just pick you up and we'll just walk outside with your foster parent, and you'll be able to come back later on, you know. And I just picked the kid up and just carried him, you know, kind of piggybacked on my back, and he started laughing and so forth and so on, and I was able to really get him out and so forth and so on. But I really saw that there was no sort of boundary set from the family, that his mother and dad that were into things. Again, in all honesty, there was a lot of substance abuse. There was no sort of boundaries in terms of how you even sit there and interact with the outside world. And so it was something that was kind of sad there. Now, triangles denote the way a couple, when unstable, involves a third person in order to restore some stability to the relationship. For example, in the Jefferson family, the parents form a triangle with Justin to protect and stabilize an unstable dyad, the partner's relationship as such. And you have to have heads up, because in all honesty, this is just an everyday occurrence sometimes, which if you don't think, if you don't follow the Spirit of God many times, that's why I say many times we need to have the Lord guiding and leading us, because many times we go according to our carnal minds or our emotions, what it might be, and find ourselves getting into something that can be very dangerous for us. There are police officers who have to learn that you don't go and get into domestic violence. Be careful with that, because many of them got killed and shot getting involved in a couple's argument. So therefore, they had to have special training for these officers many years ago, where it said that is something that you have to have heads up on. The officers were frustrated many times when the woman said, no, I am not going to file any charges against him. Or got frustrated many times when all of a sudden the husband and wife would turn on them as such. And so therefore, again, that's one of those kind of everyday occurrences where you might have two people involved in a conflict, and they might try to draw another person in to really kind of stabilize or diffuse this thing here as such. And you have to be very careful about it, because some persons who've gotten involved have gotten killed. And so heads up on that one. So those are the basic concepts that I basically wanted to go on with you, and we're going to keep those in mind. We kind of like go back now and take a look at the integrative model. And so therefore, before we go into utilize the integrative model, we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back, and we're going to kind of go back in a review way, and then move forward in terms of talking about the integrative model. But I wanted you to become familiar with those concepts, re-familiar with those concepts.